Breaking news, Justin Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act to crush the Freedom Convoy protest was just deemed illegal by a federal court judge. Federal government's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act in 2022 was unreasonable, a federal court rules. Now let's go back 1 year into the Public Order Emergency Commission, the POEC, or the Emergencies Act inquiry. And this was put together. It was largely a show trial that had no teeth, but it was put together with Justice Paul Rouleau at the head of this thing. And, well, of course, handpicked by Justin Trudeau, a member of the Trudeau Foundation, found that Trudeau was justified. And these are the reasons that he gave. I wrote this a year ago. Justice Paul Rouleau justified the use of the Emergencies Act, not because the Freedom Convoy was a threat, but because the government failed in their duties at all levels. Government incompetence is now the threshold to suspend civil liberties in Canada. Now, that was the case a year ago. Moving forward, it doesn't look so much the case. But at the time, yes, of course, Justice Paul Rouleau had this to say.
In fact, I've sometimes think I'm no more than a puppet with a lot of puppeteers behind who are making the whole system work. And I deserve virtually no credit for all that's happened to date.
Oh, no, you'll be given the credit for being the puppet, of course. But yeah, Commissioner Rouleau, in a use of an analogy at the end of the Emergencies Act inquiry, refers to himself as a puppet. Canadians across the country have been suspecting this for over a month as this was going on. Now, moving forward to today, breaking news. Federal court judge ruled that the use of the Emergencies Act was unreasonable and therefore illegal in its sense. Now, in the decision, it is declared that the decision to issue the proclamation and the associated regulations and order was unreasonable and ultra vires the Emergencies Act. Also, at this point, it is declared that the regulations infringe Section 2B of the Charter. That would be the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, and declared that the order infringed on Section 8 of the Charter, and neither infringement was justified under Section 1. Now, Section 1 of the Emergencies Act would be the justification for it. There has to be absolutely no other means in order for them to take care of a situation, and they have to have exhausted all of that. Well, they didn't demonstrate this. It wasn't possible that they had demonstrated this, and obviously the judge listened to all the arguments in this case and declared that no, it was not justified. And this is how obviously the POEC or the inquiry should have gone, because it was logical from all aspects that government failing in their duties isn't justification for declaring a state of emergency and suspending all civil liberties. This is nationwide in Canada, mind you. And of course, the freezing of bank accounts, which is really like Soviet level kind of response to dissent in the nation's capital, to a protest, mind you, a protest. Now, the emergency proclamation was not justified in relation to the relevant factual and legal constraints that were required to be taken into consideration. Justice Richard Mosley wrote in his decision, the decision to use the proclamation was unreasonable and led to the infringement of charter rights not justified under Section 1, the justice wrote. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association filed an application for judicial review against the government's use of the Emergencies Act, as did several other groups and individuals. The federal court found that the decisions to declare the Emergencies Act was ultra vires and unreasonable, and the measures violated the Charter. And the Canadian Civil Liberties Association lawyer Ewa Kardziewska said in a brief statement on social media. Now, this is a decision. I want to jump in and say all the things that I'd love to say about this, but there is constraints here. As a public figure here, and I'm not a legal expert, I don't want to give any sort of legal opinion on this. So I'm gonna, bide my time here, get more information from legal experts, and that's probably the best case scenario to go forward. Now, breaking, Pierre Poilievre put this on Twitter. The judge rules that Trudeau broke the highest law in the land with the Emergencies Act. He caused the crisis by dividing people, then violated charter rights to illegally suppress citizens. As PM, I will unite the country for freedom. Let's hope he's actually telling the truth in that. Only time will tell, because it looks like he's going to be the next prime minister. Of course, showing the True North article saying federal court declares Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act unconstitutional. Yes, this would be the highest court in our land. Now, Chrystia Freeland, of course, getting right to the media and telling them that, yeah, we're gonna challenge this one more time. You know, they want us to respect the courts, of course, until the courts rule against them.
So we are aware of the court decision. We have discussed it with the Prime Minister, with cabinet colleagues, with senior federal government officials and experts. We respect very much Canada's independent judiciary. However,
Why does you got to talk like that?
we do not agree with this decision, and respectfully, we will be appealing it. I would just like to take a moment to remind Canadians of how serious the situation was in our country.
I would like to just remind all Canadians how serious the declaration of the Emergencies Act is. This is the suspension of civil liberties across the entire nation. This is coast to coast. Just suspending our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and putting in new regulations so that they could freeze people's assets that disagreed with them politically. Of course, in the POAC, a lot of information came to light about the fact that they wanted to declare the state of emergency ahead of time. This was actually in the talks from the time that the truckers had left British Columbia in the POAC and the inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act. This all came to light. So what she says next, take what she says with a grain of salt here.
We took that decision. The public safety of Canadians was under threat. Our national security, which includes our national economic security, was under threat. It was a hard decision to take. We took it very seriously after a lot of hard work, after a lot of careful deliberation. We were convinced at the time, I was convinced at the time, it was the right thing to do. It was the necessary thing to do. I remain, and we remain, convinced of that. And I'll now turn it over to my colleague, the Minister of Justice, and then we'll hear from my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety.
Well, she's obviously lying there and saying that she was convinced after long deliberation. Again, the POAC did point or did bring to light the fact that they were talking about this right from the get-go. But at the time, they were actually lying to the public and telling the public that this was the recommendation of police agencies at all levels. That, again, turned out to be an absolute fabrication. No public police, no police force, no CSIS, the RCMP, or local level police or provincial level police at all asked for this to be declared, even though this was their statement at the time. Now, moving forward, here's her colleague coming forward and saying his piece about this.
In other respects, it finds it was not. Upon reviewing that decision, we obviously reiterate the respect for the judicial process that Minister Freeland has just mentioned, but a fundamental aspect of the judicial process is also proceeding on an appeal. And after that consultation with the Prime Minister, with Cabinet colleagues, we've taken the decision that we will be proceeding on an appeal, as is within our rights within the judicial system.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. At the end of the day, that's really where you stand on this. Now, people on Twitter pointing things out. Here's Mike on Twitter saying, if I were one of those poor folks who had their accounts frozen, I would be calling a civil lawyer today. Absolutely. Now, I'll leave in the description down below a link to the decision. You can rifle through this. There's all kinds of great information that can come out because of it, but I would recommend go do that. Go read it for yourself. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice or anything like this, but I would love to bring lawyers on to the channel to give advice, or at least more of an educated opinion about all of this. And of course, I look to the Canadian Constitution Foundation, the people who are actually fighting in this case, with some of the parties, some of the people in the parties fighting for this were them. And Christine Van Geyn is a great source of information. You can check her out on YouTube as well under the Canadian Constitution Foundation. Always updates going up on there. But she says here, when the whole idea of Freeland saying that the feds will be appealing the court ruling, she says, bring it on. Freeland, the feds will be appealing a court ruling. Chrystia Freeland says that the federal government will appeal a court's ruling that the use of the Emergencies Act was unreasonable. Well, it absolutely was unreasonable, and I assume that the courts, because they're not in Trudeau's back pocket, just like Paul Rouleau or some of these other ones, David Johnson with the Chinese Interference Commission, all of this stuff. This is more of a real court. This is a lot less of the kangaroo courts that they've been bringing forward to us here in Canada. So anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. I'm going to get going. I'm going to get down to Vancouver to catch a flight out to Calgary, going to the Tucker Carlson event there. It looks like Jordan Peterson will also be attending there and talking with Danielle Smith. So looking forward to this. Lots of great people coming out. If you want to do a meet and greet, check out the communities tab. There's a little thing on there. If not, look on Twitter and you'll see where we're all meeting up and you can join in. Anyway, we'll see you guys in the next one. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, as always, keep on trekking.